The way my Monday started was with an email from my boss saying, "Great quarter, Leo. Keep up the good work." The way my Monday ended was with a $400 fine for a plant that was, according to the official documentation, exactly 1 inch too tall. I was out on the deck, flipping a frozen patty on the grill, trying to channel some deeply needed zen. The sun was going down, and the smell of lighter fluid and cheap charcoal promised at least a moment of suburban peace. I was wearing my official Grill Master apron, which is mostly just a normal apron with a ridiculous stain pattern. Everything was fine. Better than fine, even. Then I saw it. Tucked right under the windshield wiper of my trustworthy, slightly dented sedan was an envelope. Not just any envelope. This was the heavyweight, off-white cardstock preferred exclusively by lawyers, dentists, and worst of all, the Heritage Oaks Homeowners Association. The paper alone felt like judgment. I wiped the grease on my apron and peeled the thing off. It was addressed to Occupant, 1422 Wisteria Lane, because apparently the HOA had only mastered 2 forms of address: aggressive formality and total disdain for my actual name. I didn't even have to open it to feel the blood pressure spike. I knew, with the certainty of a man who's lived under HOA rule for 5 agonizing years, that this wasn't a flyer for the community pancake breakfast. This was a shaming. I ripped the seal. The subject line, printed in a tiny, infuriating Arial font, read, "Violation Notice. Failure to comply with Landscape Maintenance Protocol." My eye skipped down, directly to the $sign. $400, $100. 400 American dollars. For what? I squinted at the specifics. Grass height violation. Exceeding 4.5 inches. Measured at 5.5 inches. 5.5 inches. I stood there, hamburger patty momentarily forgotten, and stared out at my lawn. It was green. It was arguably a little shaggy. It was not threatening to engulf the house and signal the collapse of civilized society. It looked like a lawn that hadn't seen a mower in about 10 days. I had planned to cut it tomorrow. Now, because some pathetic pencil pusher with a ruler and too much free time had clearly spent their afternoon crawling around my yard, I was $400 poorer, all for a single inch of rebellious Kentucky bluegrass. It was the absolute last straw. I had endured the complaints about my political lawn gnome, the anonymous letters about my garishly bright patio umbrella, and the sternly worded memo about the time my trash cans were visible for an unapproved 27 minutes. But this was war. I pulled out my phone and punched in the number for Brenda, my neighbor, and the only person in this neighborhood who understood the meaning of the word sarcasm. She picked up on the first ring. "Let me guess," she drawled, her voice thick with immediate sympathy. "They noticed your grill smoke drifted 18 feet and 3 inches into the restricted common airspace." "Worse," I spat, pacing the deck. "Worse, Brenda. My lawn is under federal investigation. I'm practically a menace to society." I held the letter up to the speaker, then remembered phones don't work like that. $400 for being 1 inch over the maximum height. The document cites Bylaw 7, subsection C, paragraph 4, which apparently governs the acceptable height of a blade of grass. They even used the word unruly. Brenda let out a massive, wheezing laugh. "Unruly? That's gold, Leo. You know Agnes Prunestone must have measured it herself. She probably had a little tiny calibrated ruler and a magnifying glass. The woman is unhinged." Well, I'm about to go unhinged her, I muttered, flipping the patty one last time, purely out of habit. I can't just pay this. This isn't about the money, it's about the principle. I swear, if I ever meet the person who wrote Bylaw 7, subsection C, I'm going to have strong words about their hobbies. Strong words and a weed whacker? Something like that. I'm going to fight this. I'm going to write them a strongly worded email that will make their compliance officer weep. I hung up with Brenda, fired up my laptop, and drafted the most formal, yet passive-aggressive email known to man, demanding photographic evidence and a precise measurement methodology. I even linked to a Wikipedia page on the variable growth rate of C4 versus C3 grasses. The response came back within an hour. This was fast, which meant it was automated, or Agnes Prunestone was glued to her inbox, waiting for a victim. It wasn't signed by Agnes, but by the HOA Compliance Department, which I suspect is just Agnes with a different email signature. Mr. Maxwell, thank you for your correspondence. The violation is considered confirmed based on visual evidence recorded by a trained inspector on today's date at 3:17 p.m. The fine is upheld. Per the regulations you cite, Bylaw 7 is non-negotiable. Payment is due within 7 days. Further non-compliance will result in daily accruing penalties. Have a compliant day. Have a compliant day. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. I hadn't even finished the patty yet. It was still sitting on my plate, cooling. They had dismissed my entire, eloquent argument with a single, passive-aggressive sentence. They hadn't just won the battle. They hadn't even recognized that a battle had begun. They saw me as a minor annoyance, a gnat to be swatted with a $400 fly swatter. That's when the first small, insidious idea wormed its way into my brain. It was stupid. It was expensive. It was absolutely, wonderfully petty. And it was exactly what this neighborhood deserved. I would comply, all right. I would comply so hard it would cause Agnes Prunestone to spontaneously combust into a pile of perfectly manicured rose petals. The goal was to get the lawn cut. The method was entirely flexible. I needed a non-mechanical, non-petroleum-based, maximum impact solution. Something that said, "You wanted landscaping? You got landscaping, you maniacs." I closed the laptop, the glowing screen reflecting in my eyes. The battle was officially underway. And I wasn't going to just trim the grass. I was going to turn my yard into a viral, four-legged protest. Bring on the chaos. Bring on the comedy. Bring on whatever farm animal was available for rental. I had a lot of work to do. The problem, as I saw it, wasn't the grass. The grass was merely a symptom of a much larger disease, the total and utter lack of chill endemic to the homeowners association culture. I needed a cure, and it had to be a loud one. My epiphany didn't arrive in a flash of lightning or a dramatic movie moment. It arrived after 2 hours of fruitless debate with myself and 2 rapidly cooling beers. I was flipping through an old bookmark folder that contained articles I'd saved while procrastinating at work. There, nestled between 10 best air fryer recipes and Why You Should Never Buy a Timeshare, was a piece titled, "Goats, the New Trendy Urban Landscapers." Goats, I murmured to the empty kitchen. Goats were good. They ate everything. They were notoriously hard to contain. But they were also destructive. My neighbor, Mr. Henderson, across the street, had prize-winning impatience. I didn't want to ruin his day, just Agnes's. I needed precision chaos. I opened a new tab. My first search was a generic, hopeful mess. Rent lawn-eating animals near me. The results were mostly commercial mowing services with unfortunate names like Goat Guys or Lawn Llama Landscaping. I scrolled past those. too professional. I needed a side hustle operation, a true maverick. I refined the search. Livestock rental for grazing, private property. That's when I found the ad. It was poorly formatted, had a picture of a guy in overalls leaning against a very rusty trailer, and the name of the operation was Shepherd Steve's Mobile Grazing Solutions. Underneath the name, in all caps, was the single, beautiful word, sheep. Perfect, I whispered, slamming my fist on the counter. Sheep. They're less destructive than goats, but they graze systematically. They're fluffy, which adds a visual layer of absurdity. And they are absolutely 100% a violation of at least 20 different HOA bylaws I hadn't even read yet. This wasn't just fixing a violation, it was weaponizing compliance. My mind immediately started mapping the logistics. I'd need at least a dozen, 50. The fine was $400. The cost of this operation needed to make that fine look like pocket change. It had to be over the top. The number 50 just felt right. 50 sheep to mow a quarter-acre suburban lawn. That was the ratio of true genius. I started a pros/cons list that I knew I wouldn't follow, just to feel better about myself. Pros. Grass gets cut. Compliance achieved. HOA completely loses their minds. Priceless. Viral potential. Fame. I get to say I own 50 full sheep for a day. Cons. The smell? Minor drawback. The cost? We'll deal with it later. The neighbors? They'll get over it. Jail time? Worth it? With a steady hand that belied the panic churning in my gut, I called the number listed on the website. A gruff, cheerful voice answered. "Shepherd Steve's, you graze 'em, we chase 'em." "Hi, yes, I'm calling about renting some of your, grazing solutions," I said, trying to sound like a professional land developer. "Well, you've come to the right place. Got a big field, do you? We service everything from solar farms to municipal water treatment plants. What's the size of the spread we're looking at?" I took a deep breath. "It's a residential lawn, in a suburban development, very well maintained usually, about a quarter of an acre, I'd say." Silence on the other end, then a low chuckle. "A quarter acre, fella? You trying to get 4 sheep for a couple hours?" "No, sir," I corrected, trying to keep the excitement out of my voice. "I was thinking 50. I need 50 sheep for a temporary high-volume landscaping project." Another, much longer silence. I heard a dog bark, and then Steve cleared his throat. 50 sheep for a quarter acre. Fella, that's about 48 sheep more than you need, and you're going to have about 5 gallons of pure manure per square foot. You sure you didn't mean 5? "No, 50, I insisted, already committed. "Look, it's an emergency compliance issue, and I'm looking for maximum ground coverage. I need it done quickly and dramatically. Do you have 50 available for this coming Saturday?" I heard the sound of paper rustling. "Well, I got a lot of them fat Dorset horns just finishing up a field rotation. They eat like vacuum cleaners. I can do Saturday. But this is going to cost you. We charge by the head and the distance." We negotiated. It felt like I was buying a sports car, not renting a herd of fluffy lawn mowers. We finally settled on a price that made my bank account weep, but which, crucially, exceeded the $400 fine by a factor of 10. This was no longer about saving money. It was about the perfect cost-to-petty revenge ratio. "And one more thing, Steve," I added. "I need to fence them in. Do you rent electric fencing?" "Sure do, son. Battery-powered, low voltage. Just keeps them from wandering into your neighbor's prize-winning zucchini." "Look, I gotta ask," Steve said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Is this some kind of gender reveal party? No, Steve, I sighed. It's a compliance victory celebration. Look, I need you to drop the trailer off Saturday morning, around 9 a.m. The goal is to finish the grass by noon. 9 a.m., 50 Dorsets, suburbia. You got yourself a deal, son. This is going to be a good story for the ranch hands. I hung up, a strange mix of euphoria and existential dread washing over me. I had done it. The sheep were coming. My next step was to prepare for the real show. If I was going to risk my house value and my reputation, I was going to share the fallout. I drove to the hardware store and bought the cheapest, flimmiest electric fence I could find. I also bought a small pop-up tent, ostensibly to shield the camera equipment, but mostly because I needed a live stream HQ. Back at home, I set up my spare phone on a tripod in the living room and practiced my introduction. Welcome, folks, to the suburb's newest, fluffiest, and most effective lawn mowing service. Too enthusiastic. You wanted grass compliance? Meet the compliance unit. Too dry. Finally, I settled on a title for the stream and an opening line. The title was perfect. The Grass Inquisition, a mutton-based response. The opening line would be pure, unadulterated snark. When the HOA gives you a fine, you give them a flock. I had 48 hours until Shepherd Steve's arrival. I spent the next 2 days obsessively checking the weather, clearing my small front porch of everything but the most essential supplies, a folding chair, a thermos, and the camera setup, and sending vague, teasing texts to Brenda. Get your camera ready Saturday morning. Things are about to get woolly. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I felt like a general plotting a ridiculously fluffy, low-stakes invasion. The front yard, currently a slightly shaggy $400 piece of land, was about to become a stage for the greatest act of suburban defiance in the history of Wisteria Lane. The line had been drawn, and it was time to cross it with 50 four-legged grass-chomping friends. I woke up Saturday to the sound of a diesel engine slowing down outside my house, a truly marvelous grinding noise that echoed through the quiet, pristine street. It was 8:58 a.m. Shepherd Steve was punctual and loud. I threw on a clean t-shirt, a baseball cap, and a pair of sunglasses to hide the panic in my eyes. I looked professional, which was the only defense I had left. Outside, a sight that should never appear on Wisteria Lane was filling up the cul-de-sac. A massive, rust-colored livestock trailer, the kind you see hauling cattle across state lines. Shepherd Steve himself, a man built like a fire hydrant with a weathered face and a 10-gallon hat, hopped out of the cab. "Morning, high-volume landscaper," Steve boomed, his voice loud enough to carry across 3 lawns. "The Dorsets are ready to rock and roll. They had a light breakfast, so they're hungry for your grass." This was the first key interaction, and I needed to play the part. I jogged over, smiling tightly. "Morning, Steve. Perfect timing. The client is highly particular about scheduling." I glanced nervously toward Agnes Prunestone's house, which was already showing signs of life. A sheer curtain twitched. "Well, let's get you set up," Steve said, completely oblivious to the theatricality of the moment. He pulled out the biggest spool of electric fencing I'd ever seen. "Now listen up, son. These are fine, upstanding, but hungry animals. You gotta make sure that fence is tight. They are not house pets. They respect the barrier. The voltage is low, just a little tickle, but it's important." He proceeded to give me a 5-minute rapid-fire instruction manual on sheep welfare and handling. He explained how the sheep would establish a pecking order, how I needed to provide water, He'd brought a huge trough, and how to tell if a sheep was feeling melancholy. I stood there, nodding rapidly, trying to absorb facts about ovine behavior while a massive diesel truck idled on my front lawn. "And one more thing," Steve said, putting a hand on my shoulder. "If you see one trying to chew on anything plastic, you distract it immediately. They'll try to eat a bicycle if it stands still long enough. You got that?" Plastic avoidance, water access, and no melancholic sheep, I rattled off. "Got it. I'm practically a professional shepherd." "Good. Let's get these hungry mowers on the turf." The sheer spectacle of the sheep being offloaded was almost too much for my suburban senses. Steve opened the trailer's back ramp, and the first Dorsets, fat, white, and surprisingly fast, bounded out. They hit the ground running, or rather grazing. 50 sheep, released all at once onto a manicured, quarter-acre lawn. The chaos was immediate. It wasn't loud, just a dense, rhythmic munching sound, interspersed with nervous baas. My neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was retrieving his newspaper. He paused mid-reach, holding the rolled-up Times like a club. His head did a classic slow-motion double-take. He stared at the field of white fluff covering my property, his jaw slack. Then, he looked at his prize-winning, perfectly trimmed boxwoods, and the terror in his eyes was instantly clear. I gave him a weak, apologetic wave. I ran to my live stream HQ tent, heart hammering. I quickly set up the tripod and the phone, aimed squarely at the bleating, grazing mass, and hit Go Live. The stream title flashed, "The Grass Inquisition." A mutton-based response. "Welcome, folks, to the suburb's newest, fluffiest, and most effective lawn mowing service," I chirped into the phone, trying to project casual confidence. "My name is Leo Maxwell, and I am the proud, temporary owner of the Heritage Oaks Compliance Herd. When the HOA gives you a fine for being 1 inch too tall, you don't call a gardener. You call Shepherd Steve, and you get a flock." The comments started rolling in instantly. User @LambChopLover. Wait, is this real user @HOA Slayer. Best. Protest. Ever. User Brenda27. Told you he was unhinged. Love it. User confused. Karen. What is that smell? I responded in real time, my tone conversational and snarky. Yes, Lamb Chop Lover, it is terrifyingly real. @confused. Karen, that smell, my friend, is the sweet, sweet aroma of agricultural compliance. I started narrating the action. Notice the systemic pattern here. They are attacking the 5.5 inchers first. That one, I call her Agnes Jr. She is going straight for the dandelions, a true professional. The stream viewer count was skyrocketing. I was a local sensation, probably moments away from being a very localized legal target. Then came the first official escalation. A beige Honda Civic, bearing the official, comically small magnetic logo of the HOA, pulled up abruptly behind Steve's trailer. Out stepped Todd, the young, pale, recent college graduate who had clearly landed the worst entry-level job imaginable, HOA representative. He was wearing an ill-fitting polo and a look of profound misery. Todd spotted me and the camera setup immediately. He looked like he wanted to crawl back into the Civic and drive into the sun. "Mr. Maxwell," Todd squeaked, pulling a clipboard out from under his arm like a shield. "Ah, Todd, I presume you are here for the official inspection, I said, pointing the camera at him. Say hello to the internet, Todd. We're currently watching the fastest, most organic lawn mowing operation in North America. Todd, can you confirm for the viewers that the original fine was for a grass height of 5.5 inches? Todd stammered, his eyes darting between the camera, the sheep, and the massive trailer. Sir, this is a violation of Bylaw 9, subsection D. It clearly states, no domestic livestock shall be kept on the property. Ah, Todd, excellent point, I beamed, pulling out a laminated sheet of paper that I'd printed an hour ago. But here, I have my rental agreement, classifying these animals as a temporary agricultural grazing and fire prevention unit. They are not kept, they are deployed. Furthermore, I've filed an intent to operate an agricultural project with the county, which states that locally sourced livestock deployed for municipal land management purposes are exempt from certain nuisance ordinances. Can you check your binder for the agricultural exemption clause, Todd? Todd was frozen. His binder clearly did not contain an agricultural exemption clause. He flipped through the pages frantically, his lips moving silently. The whole exchange was happening with a backdrop of 50 sheep aggressively chewing. User at legal llama. He's actually right. You can't regulate farm animals on a temporary basis. User at Todd sucks. Look at his face. He's melting. Sir, Todd finally managed, his voice strained. I need you to cease this operation immediately and remove the woolly units. I am issuing a new citation for what, Todd? I interrupted cheerfully. For compliance? My grass is actively being brought into compliance. My fine was for tall grass. In 2 hours I will have short grass. It's a self-correcting problem. Todd, defeated, lowered his clipboard. He mumbled something about having to consult with the board, and with a final desperate glance at a sheep that was trying to eat the magnetic HOA logo off his car, he scrambled back into his Civic and peeled out. I turned back to the camera, grinning. And sis, that, folks, is how you handle bureaucracy. Todd is a nice kid, but he brought a printed memo to a sheep fight. We are in the clear, for now, but don't go anywhere. I smell a bigger fish coming. The viewer count hit 5,000. This was better than I could have ever imagined. The chaos was only just beginning, and the sheep were doing a phenomenal job. The grass was vanishing quickly, leaving behind a patchy but unquestionably short lunar landscape. The absurdity of the situation, the immediate compliance success, and the sheer pettiness of the whole thing had coalesced into a perfect viral moment. I just needed to survive the next wave of officialdom. The next 2 hours were glorious, chaotic pandemonium. The sheep munched, the sun rose, and the live stream viewership stabilized around 8,000 people. I was getting messages from friends across the country asking if I had finally lost my mind. The answer was yes, but it was worth it. The biggest issue was the neighbors. Mr. Henderson was out with a hose, frantically spraying the sheep to keep them away from his fence line, which, hilariously, only made them want to drink the water. A group of kids from down the street had gathered, pressing their faces against the electric fence. Safely unpowered, thank goodness, and whispering about the lawn army. I was narrating the entire time, my voice getting hoarse. And here we see Barnaby demonstrating the classic Dorset scrape, ensuring maximum root absorption of the grass. Look at that technique. Truly masterful. Remember, this is about agricultural efficiency, people, not a circus. Though I do admit, it is better than a circus. I knew the victory over Todd was temporary. The HOA had one move left before resorting to lawyers, and that was the big one. The police. They always resort to the police. They treat local law enforcement as their personal armed compliance officers. I saw the flashing blue and red lights before I heard the sirens, which was very considerate of them. The patrol car, a sleek, official-looking machine, rounded the bend, the lights bouncing off the pristine chrome of Mrs. Prunestone's Lexus. It stopped right behind Todd's hastily abandoned parking spot. 2 officers emerged. Officer Jones, a stern, seasoned cop with a weary look, and Officer Ramirez, younger, with a half-suppressed smile already playing on his lips. I immediately turned the camera angle to capture the interaction, announcing to my viewers, "All right, folks, this is the main event. Bring out your popcorn. The cavalry has arrived, but are they here for the sheep or for justice?" Officer Jones, the lead, approached the electric fence cautiously, eyeing the sheep with deep suspicion. "Sir," Jones said, his voice flat and professional, "we received a rather unusual call. Public disturbance, unauthorized livestock, and, I quote, a woolly obstruction. Are these animals yours?" "Officers, thank you for coming," I said, maintaining a tone of utmost respect and cooperation, which I knew would infuriate the HOA. "My name is Leo Maxwell. These animals are a temporary agricultural grazing unit, contracted from a certified local ranch for an emergency compliance project. I have the rental agreement right here, if you'd like to see it." I held up the paperwork. Officer Jones sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "Mr. Maxwell, this is a residential neighborhood. We're not here to read your lease agreement for a herd of livestock." "Understood, officer," I replied, gesturing grandly toward the lawn. "But the question is, what law exactly am I breaking? Is there a specific ordinance in this town against temporary, non-domestic, zero-emission grazing activity? I've checked the city codes for nuisance and livestock, and my setup, with a temporary low-voltage fence and certified handler oversight, appears to be a legal gray area, which I suspect is why the HOA didn't call the city and went straight to a more direct approach." Officer Jones exchanged a look with Officer Ramirez. This was the moment of high-stakes, low-consequence comedy. They were legally unsure what to do. The problem was not a mugging, a domestic dispute, or even a runaway dog. The problem was landscaping compliance solved in the most ridiculous manner possible. "Look, sir," Jones started, his voice a little more exasperated. "They're blocking the sidewalk for one. That's an obstruction. And frankly, the smell is generating a number of complaints." "Ah, the odor," I exclaimed, seizing the point. "The odor, officer, is an unfortunate byproduct of organic lawn care. It's what we in the industry call natural fertilizer. Regarding the sidewalk," I pointed to a sheep that was calmly grazing right up to the curb. "They are on my property, officer, behind a fence. I assure you, they are not escaping. They are here for a single purpose: to eat this specific grass down to 4.5 inches or less, thereby solving the only documented crime committed on this property this week, having grass that was too tall." I leaned closer, lowering my voice conspiratorially for the camera, though I knew the officers could hear me. "Officer, is there a specific bylaw in this community about the type of permitted zero-emission grazing livestock permitted on private property?" Officer Ramirez, who had been trying desperately to keep a professional distance, finally cracked. I saw him quickly whip out his phone, not to check the bylaws, but to snap a covert picture of a sheep that was trying to nibble the antenna on his patrol car. Officer Jones saw the phone flash and shot Ramirez a killer look. "Ramirez, put that away. This is serious." "Yes, sir," Ramirez muttered, stuffing the phone into his pocket, but I could hear the silent laughter in his voice. Jones turned back to me, the defeat in his posture evident. Mr. Maxwell, while I cannot cite you for having sheep, I can cite you for a public nuisance due to the concentration of manure and the overall obstruction caused by the vehicle that delivered them, which is still partially blocking the street. A warning. He was issuing a warning, not a removal order. I accept that, officer. The vehicle will be moved by 1 p.m., and the manure, as soon as the grass is compliant, will be addressed. Officer Jones wrote out a generic warning ticket, handed it to me, and gave me a final, weary stare. Get those animals gone, sir, and maybe invest in a lawnmower. Thank you, officer. Have a compliant day, I replied, a smirk I couldn't hide plastered on my face. As the police car pulled away, I turned back to the camera, addressing the surge of comments. We did it, folks. The fuzz couldn't bust the flock. We achieved victory through technical legality and maximum absurdity. The scorecard: HOA 1, the initial fine; Leo 2, the sheep deployment and the police standing down. But the war isn't over. We have one final boss. I looked pointedly toward Mrs. Prunestone's house. Her blinds were fully closed, a sign that she was likely planning her final, devastating counterattack. The sheep, meanwhile, had been at it for almost 3 hours. The front lawn was now a patchwork of closely cropped dirt and stubble. It was the absolute opposite of manicured, but it was definitely under 4.5 inches. Compliance achieved. The viral momentum was insane. I was getting emails from local news stations. I was a sensation, fueled by suburban pettiness and adorable, fluffy mowers. I spent the next 30 minutes narrating the sheep's final grazing efforts, responding to more comments, and trying to keep the animals from chewing on my tent stakes, all while anticipating the inevitable final showdown. I knew it was coming. The president of the Heritage Oaks HOA would never concede to a common man and his herd of Dorsets without a dramatic, final confrontation. The stage was set for the climax. The air was thick with sheep and anticipation. It was 11:45 a.m. The grass was practically gone. The sheep were starting to look bored, having done their job with alarming efficiency. I was just congratulating my viewers and thanking Shepherd Steve, who was chatting happily on his phone, watching the chaos from a safe distance, when the temperature on Wisteria Lane dropped 20 degrees. A car door slammed with the cold, authoritative thud of a bank vault closing. She was here. Ms. Agnes Prunestone, president of the Heritage Oaks HOA, emerged from her perfectly clean silver Lexus. She was wearing a crisp white pantsuit that looked far too expensive for a Saturday morning showdown, and she was carrying a binder thicker than a medieval family Bible. Her face was set in a mask of controlled fury, the kind of expression that suggests she drinks lemon juice for breakfast. I took a deep, steadying breath and aimed the camera at her, making sure the sheep were prominently featured in the foreground. Folks, I announced into the mic, our final boss has arrived. Prepare for Bylaw 7, subsection C, paragraph 4. She's coming in hot. Agnes stopped a few feet from the fence, surveying the scene. 50 sheep, a patchy dirt and stubble lawn, a cheap camping tent, a bewildered Mr. Henderson across the street, and me filming the whole thing. Mr. Maxwell, she enunciated, her voice razor-sharp, cutting through the sheep noises. You will remove these foul creatures immediately. Good morning, Ms. Prunestone, I replied, keeping my voice light and pleasant, which only seemed to make her angrier. I'm afraid I can't do that just yet. The agricultural unit is still ensuring the property is in full compliance with all relevant landscape maintenance protocols, specifically regarding Bylaw 7, subsection C. They are, as you can clearly see, providing a thorough and natural cut. Agnes slammed her binder onto the hood of her Lexus, the sound echoing through the neighborhood. "Don't you dare speak of compliance. This entire operation is a malicious, calculated affront to the tranquility and aesthetic integrity of Heritage Oaks. I have a list of new violations right here. Let's start with Bylaw 14, subsection A, odor nuisance, and Bylaw 22, paragraph 3, unauthorized installation of temporary structures, tent and fence, and of course, the new violation I just signed into effect an hour ago. Bylaw 38, non-approved, non-domestic, mammalian grazing activity. The absurdity was peaking. I couldn't help but laugh a little, quickly turning it into a cough. A new violation, Ms. Prunestone? Impressive reaction time. But let's rewind. The original fine, the reason for this entire agricultural deployment, was $400 for a grass height of 5.5 inches. Can you confirm that as of this very moment, the grass on my property measures 4.5 inches or less? I knelt down and pointed the camera at the stubble. The sheep had done their job with brutal efficiency. There wasn't a blade over 2 inches left. Agnes pursed her lips, her eyes narrowing. She knew she was cornered on the original issue. The original violation is irrelevant, Mr. Maxwell. It has been superseded by your deliberate and willful defiance. You have created a public spectacle. Yes, I have, I agreed cheerfully. And it's quite popular. But let me make this very clear. The original fine is now nullified because the grounds for it have been corrected. I was fined for tall grass. I now have short grass. QED. I threw in the Latin for extra effect. Furthermore, my temporary agricultural project, according to the documents I filed with the county, and yes, Ms. Prunestone, I actually filed them, is protected under the state's right to farm regulations for temporary contracted services. This was the checkmate. I had found a legitimate, if obscure, agricultural loophole. Agnes's face flushed a deep crimson. She realized that she couldn't simply order me to remove the sheep without escalating the issue to a protracted, public, and embarrassing legal battle involving zoning boards and livestock law, a battle she knew the HOA, already viral on the internet, would lose. She finally conceded, the words dripping with venom. Very well, Mr. Maxwell. The original fine is rescinded. You have technically, if pathetically, complied with Bylaw 7. A cheer erupted in the comments section of the live stream. However, Agnes continued, recovering quickly, the fine for Bylaw 38, unauthorized, non-domestic mammalian grazing activity, stands at $1,500, and you are required to remove all livestock, fencing, and the HQ tent by 6:00 p.m. this evening. Failure to do so will result in immediate daily fines and legal action for trespass on association property. I smiled. The $1,500 fine was ridiculous, but it was a moral victory disguised as a financial loss. I had won the war, even if I lost the last skirmish. The $400 fine for grass was gone. The HOA president had to personally come out and admit I was right, and I had the greatest story of suburban revenge ever told. A pleasure doing business with you, Ms. Prunestone, I said, giving her a formal nod. I'll ensure the sheep are removed by the specified time, and I'll see you at the next quarterly meeting. Agnes turned, gave the sheep one last withering look of pure disgust, and returned to her Lexus, the sound of the door closing a final, angry punctuation mark. I turned back to the camera, my face beaming. We did it, folks. The price of freedom, apparently, is $1,500 and a lot of manure. But the grass is cut, and the tyranny has been defeated. The revolution was televised, and it was powered by 50 fat, fluffy Dorsets. Shepherd Steve, who had watched the entire exchange from the porch, walked over, chuckling. "Well, son, you got your money's worth. Best show in town. I'll get the trailer ready." We loaded the sheep back onto the trailer. It took about an hour, and by 4 p.m., they were gone. The scent lingered, but the street was clear. I walked out onto my front lawn. It was a disaster, a stubbly, uneven mess pockmarked with fertilizer, but it was short. I had defeated the HOA. I packed up my tent, folded the fence, and put away the camera. I ended the live stream with a final address. Thank you all for watching The Grass Inquisition. I hope this inspires you to fight back against petty bureaucracy, or at least invest in a good lawn mower. I'm Leo Maxwell, and I'll see you when the next violation notice comes. Which, judging by the look in Agnes's eyes, will probably be tomorrow for failure to maintain a compliant odor. Until then, stay ridiculous, and have a compliant day. I signed off, leaning back on my now empty, sheep-fertilized lawn, watching the sunset. I still had to pay $1,500, but the moral victory was priceless, and the grass was definitely, gloriously short.